Chapter 5. The inner river sparkled in the last rays of the setting sun. The Vidort and the Carcano fortress towered over the water, burned down during the war. They were now being slowly rebuilt by the Temerian army. Ossian turned their attention to the north. "There," he said. "Ice connects both shores. We'll go that way." Earthkind snorted through his fingers. "I don't like it," he said. "The crust is thin in places, riddled with holes, and the forts are too close. We should go on the inner and Traverfork. Look for a secluded ford. It'll be better and safer for the sergeant." "As for your companion," Regis said, "if you do have his best interests at heart, I recommend you hurry. The most sensible thing to do would be to ask for help from Carcano. They probably have ample medical supplies. But I can see that you are not fond of this approach." "Well, we're not fond." Took the words from my mouth. Detlaff smiled. "What's wrong with you Temerian soldiers?" he asked. "Won't you look for support from your own?" "Look here, you smart-ass," Ossian said. "Did we ask who you are, where you came from, or who abused you to the point of looking like dead bodies?" Detlaff was silent. "Let's go to Fenkarn then," Regis said. "I used to have a summer cottage there. Maybe some supplies remain." "Have you lost your mind, Sawbones?" Erskine asked. "We're not pushing upon accursed elven grounds. It's not good for the sergeant, you say? Well, we'll just have to force the inner, here, and then make haste to Dillingen." They entered the river under the cover of dark clouds. Only the cracking sounds of ice disturbed the silence. Just as it seemed they would pass unnoticed, a thud sounded behind them. Ossian cursed. 3 riders, armed patrol. The Temerians saw them right away. One spurred his horse and galloped towards the fortress. The other 2 trotted to the shore. They dismounted, drew their swords, and ran onto the ice. "Halt!" they shouted. "Halt!" The mare pulling the sleigh snorted and obeyed. "Move, you nag!" Ursine shouted and yanked the reins, with no result. Moments later, the Temerians were on them, so close they could see their faces. Regis looked at Detlaff. "Let's try to negotiate." Ossian spat and twirled his slingshot. The projectile whistled and dinged against the helmet of one of the soldiers. He groaned and fell onto the ice. The second jumped at the nearest, Neris. They got into a scuffle and lost their balance and fell into a nearby hole. "Neris!" Erskine dropped the reins and started towards the crevice. Ossian grabbed his arm. "Leave it! We have to run!" he shouted. Regis had had enough of running. He jumped into the cloudy waters and located the condottiere, who was wrestling with the Temerian as they both sank, the latter's armour dragging him to the bottom. Neris kicked, exhaling from her mouth. Regis swam down, took hold, and tried to lift, overestimating the capacity of his newly regenerated body. He tugged and felt his shoulder pop out of joint. His teeth grated. He tried again. Bones cracked and pain exploded, pressing him into the brinks of collapse. Then, Detlaff plunged into the water. He pushed Regis aside, grasped the condottiere with one hand and the Temerian soldier with the other. He separated and swiftly ascended to the surface. Erskine and Ossian were nowhere to be found by the time they crawled onto the gravel beside the inner. An alarm sounded from the riverside forts, and Regis attempted to help Neris stay standing, but she refused the offer and ambled as fast as she could towards the forest. He quickly followed, turning back to catch a glimpse of Detlaff dragging the soldier away before the tree line blocked his view. They ran for a long time through the forest. Then, exhausted, they walked among the Fenkarn mounds. Neris had heard of the dark fame of the place, but was too tired to protest. Finally, they came to a hut with a simple interior. There was a table lined with bottles and dried herbs on the wall. The smell churned in her nostrils. Regis dug out dry clothes from the mess, and as she changed, he looked for something among the bottles on the table. "This is your cabin?" she asked. "Mine," he said, and winced in pain as he rubbed his shoulder. "There it is." They went outside and sat down by the bonfire. Regis kindled the flames. He wiped the dust and cobwebs from the flask, uncorked it, and handed it to Neris. She swallowed. Alcohol scratching her throat filled her with heat. "Oh God, what's that?" "It's the tincture of mandrake." "What?" "Thank you, I'm abstinent." An abstinent moonshiner who, without hesitation, throws himself into treacherous depths to help strangers. You are a mysterious figure, Regis. "Well, I once met a dwarf who called himself an incorrigible altruist. Apparently this attitude is close to mine. They sat in silence. Neris stared at the shadows blinking in the snow behind Regis for a long time. But something was wrong. Finally, she understood what. She stiffened and groaned softly. You don't cast... You're a... Yes, I am. She pulled away sharply, covering her neck with her hands. Regis threw more logs on the embers. Relax. I said I was abstinent. Besides, if I wanted to hurt you, I would have just let you drown. Detlaff? Detlaff too, but it would be better if you keep it to yourself. The fire crackled. As if summoned, Detlaff emerged from the shadows and sat down between them. The Temerian will live, he said. I carried him to the walls, make sure they could see him. Neris was trembling, her head was buzzing. Regis's clothes irritated the skin and his oversized pants were slipping from her hips. She pulled them up and tightened the belt as much as she could. What's with you? Detlaff asked. She hesitated, but only for a moment. Then she decided. She swallowed the tincture and smiled. Nothing. Everything's all right. Oh boy.